Hi, my name is Wolfie. I also go by Stephen. Some people might know me as Stephen, but most people online will know me as Wolfie. I've always been told that I have a face for radio and a voice for podcasts, so here I am. I've always wanted to set up a podcast, and never had the reasoning to do it, and now I do. So if you don't know me, my name's Stephen. I'm from down south in Wexford, but I'm based in Dublin now. The reason I wanted to set up this podcast, even though everyone and their uncle has one, is I have recently began my journey on sobriety and want to kind of talk about it. I'm going to hopefully have some friends on that are on their sober journey as well, and people I've met through getting help and stuff like that, and just kind of have more of a conversation about it. And all the trials and tribulations, and just talking about life, and you know how it is to be a drag queen and stuff like that, and a queer person in this world out there. So it's gonna be a podcast about a few things. But I've an agenda. Us gays, that was an agenda. I have an agenda for the first half of it, just to kind of delve into addiction and recovery and sobriety and stuff like that, and then how other people and other walks of lives deal with stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, welcome on in. If you're listening for the first time, hi. Welcome. But yeah, let's get started. I don't have my co-host here at the moment. There will be co-hosts throughout the podcast and its journey, wherever this goes. But yeah, might as well start out. I've pre-recorded some stuff for this. It's not pre-recorded, it's an audio. It's actually a video from when I actually was in active addiction. So I recently recorded and did a video for my socials in regards to addiction. I was like, do you know what? Some people don't like watching videos. Why don't I do an audio version of it? So that's what I'm doing. Because we like to be accessible. So hi, my name's Stephen. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict, a sex and love addict, and I struggle with an eating disorder. It's been 13 long years. In active addiction. For that, I'm sober about a year. It's been a long journey. Proud of myself. But yeah, I'm just here to talk about the struggles and the whatnot of it. So I suppose I might as well give you a bit of a backstory. I'm originally from Wexford. As I previously said, I grew up with one brother and my parents, in the absolute back arse nowhere. But yeah. My struggles with addiction. So the first podcast, and I decided to actually go with my sobriety. But yeah, thanks for checking us out. Where do we start? Well, I'm Stephen. I'm an addict. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a sex and love addict, and I also suffer with an eating disorder. Hi, how are you? How's your day going? Don't tend to introduce myself as that. But when you do suffer from an addiction, that's kind of how we introduce ourselves at meetings. So that's how I tend to do it for social media and stuff like that when I'm talking about my sobriety. I entered into my sobriety just over a year ago. I have a 13-year love affair with addiction, if we want to call it that. And this podcast episode is just going to be about that. I do have a audio/video recording of me in active addiction, so that will be inputted into this at some point. So trigger warning, I will let you know when it's coming up. But yeah, let's just kind of go into it. So I was actively in addiction for 13 years. I've now been sober for over 1 year. There's no point in going into my drug of choice or anything like that. It was alcohol and whatever drug I could get my hands on. There was ones I preferred and that kind of stuff, but I'm not here to share my war stories. That's not what sobriety is about. It's about sharing, the help that we can get, and like how living a sober life can be amazing and great, even though when you're in active addiction, it's the worst thing you could ever think of. So I would have figured out that I had an issue 13 years ago, But just to give a bit of a background, I grew up in Wexford. I'm Irish. I'm also queer. Big old Mo. My boyfriend Dan. Hi, shout out to Dan. You're the best. Um, yeah, so I grew up in Wexford. It was a struggle, being a rather large homosexual that couldn't hide it at all in their life. I grew up in a very small village. It was a lovely place. The people are lovely. Looking back on it now, it's a great place. When you're growing up and you're queer, it's like, no, fuck this, I hate it all. But I would have struggled quite a lot with, like, so the main addiction I would have noticed and issue that I had would have been with food. I grew up in a quite a turbulent home. Um, who hasn't? It was the 90s. So the only thing I felt I could control was food. So this is only looking back on my life now I can understand this. I kind of understood it at the time, that I didn't like when people told me what to do with my food, or like if I hadn't finished dinner and stuff like that, and to eat. That's the kind of where I look back and I can see where the trigger is. Um, but now, looking back while in sobriety, I can see that the reason that I was so controlling over my food, so intake, over exercising and stuff like that, at a very, very young age, was because it was the only thing in my life I could control. I couldn't control my parents divorcing. I couldn't control my sexuality. I couldn't control what was going on in the world. I couldn't control, obviously, the emotions as a teenager. So I could control my food intake, whether that was not eating, starving myself. If it was over exercising, I used to be extremely underweight when I was younger. And it's addictive. So I would work out for 3 and 4 hours. I would go on diets. Obviously, when my parents had separated, my mother was a single mom raising me and my brother. So like obviously food was provided, but I wouldn't eat it, or I'd be like, oh, I'm going to make a smoothie instead, or I'm on this diet this week. So there was a lot of stuff that obviously my parents tried. It was just not something that was spoke about growing up in the early 90s. Issues with food also wasn't, a thing. I did grow up hearing, if you don't eat that, the kids in Africa could eat it and they'll starve. And I used to always reply, well, send it over. Defiant from a young, young age. But that's the first I kind of understood. When I look back now, I can see that's where the addiction originally started, because I was addicted to being in control. And then when I could control that, I could control my food intake. And then I could control how much I could work out. Because it was good. It was healthy to go work out, but it wasn't healthy to work out for 4.5 hours, for long periods, or do strenuous workouts at the age of 14 that you shouldn't be doing. But as I said, growing up in the 90s, my parents weren't aware. Like I was out in the garden playing, or I was working out and I was climbing trees. You hide these things as an addict, and I suppose I learned that from a very, very young age, how to hide stuff. I would have had my first drink at 12. And I remember that drink still to this day. And it's something that reminds me why I know I'm an addict, because I remember that first glass and that first mouthful. And when that alcohol entered my body, it was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. It gave me this kind of calm, but it also gave me this feeling of more. I wanted more, and I wasn't allowed more. And I didn't like the fact I wasn't allowed more. Looking back, you were 12. The fuck did you want more alcohol for? If you had seen what was coming. So that's when I would have had my first thing with alcohol. It was kind of maybe 15 or 16 would have been the next time when I was kind of, drinking, or would have been around. Like I would have got bits of alcohol here and there. Yourself, everyone had older cousins in the 90s and it wasn't really frowned upon, and drinking wasn't the big bad wolf that it is now. So there was alcohol around. I would sneak it. I would try rob it and that kind of stuff. The older, obviously, as I went through my teen years, when you start going to house parties and you're going staying over in a friend's house, and if it's a nagging in the field, or you're going to an underage disco where it clearly states no alcohol but you're turning up pissed, it's stuff like that. It was kind of, I suppose, glamorized when I was growing up to drink alcohol as young as we did. Everyone did it. It was the done thing. It's very much not now, which I'm glad to see. Kids and the youth nowadays kind of have an aversion to alcohol, which was not around when I was growing up, which is amazing to see, because they have more understanding how much of an addictive substance alcohol and drugs can be. Where when I grew up, we didn't know. Your parents drank or they didn't, and Bailey down the road was an alcoholic. But like that's all. There was no talk about how like, bad alcohol was to your mind, your soul, your body, your family, everything. So I kind of progressively would have drank more from the ages of 15 to 18. I did become addicted to prescription painkillers. Me and my brother were brothers, and my brother ended up injuring me. We had a fight over a pack of Wrigley chewing-gums. Just want to point that out. It's a running joke in the family now. And he ended up rupturing a ligament in my knee, the PCL ligament, so the actual posterior cruciatic ligament in my knee. Which, fair play to him because it's really, really hard to rupture that. But he kicked me at such force that my leg was bent, that it went kaboom boom. But more on that later. At some point, I will actually probably record a podcast with my brother because he's a teacher and he has a very interesting life. So that's something we might do. But this is about the addiction. I was prescribed extremely high level pain meds for that because I ended up having to go to physio. I think it was 5 cc's of blood drained from my knee. It swelled to a balloon. Just want to point out my mum made to go to school the next day, even though my foot was like a football. She's never lived that down. But I would have been prescribed really, really high level medication for that. And I liked the feeling of the painkillers. The painkillers made me feel nice. And I was on them. I was prescribed them for a certain length of time. But I was able to get my script redone. So I would have been 15 at the time. So like I was obviously telling my parents I was still in pain. So I was still getting prescribed my medication. Where it came to a point my mom realised, like, oh, like you shouldn't be taking them as much as you are because you shouldn't be in that much pain. So I was prescribed a certain amount of them and I would take 3 a day. I was still in school at the time, so I was, if we look at it that way, looking back, going to school high on prescription pills, which, unfortunately is something that is quite popular now for kids to do because they're easy and accessible. But back in my day, it was very, very odd. I remember that year, my teacher was like, you were just so happy to be around, Stephen, and you loved school. I was like, yeah, because I was high. They were swiftly taken away from me by my doctor and my mother, and I was not allowed them again. I then actually injured my back, and I also had issues with migraines where I was put on relaxants and also, again, a different medication, but it was a prescription and it was a painkiller, which I then became dependent on also. And that was due to the migraine issues that I had. So I have a plethora of health issues, because who doesn't? But I was on them and beta blockers and stuff like that. So my brain went kapoo for like all of 5th year. So I had a lot of medication lying around, and this leads to I suppose the first kind of drug-related and alcohol-related issue that happened. So I would have been drinking a lot at the time when this was happening. I was partying with my friends, going out with the weekends. At that time, when you're that age, you have a handle on your drinking and stuff like that. It's at the weekends, you're in school, that kind of stuff. I would turn up to school hungover because I would have went out the night before because there was some sort of party on in my later years, like in 5th and 6th year, which is like the end of the secondary level education in Ireland. And then it came to my leaving cert. And the day before my maths exam, I overdosed. Not a lot of people outside of my family know that. But I overdosed on a cocktail of drugs and alcohol and was rushed to hospital. My brother found me. Thankfully, I was okay. I do not remember it. And then obviously the years after that, I was in addiction. So if I did have memories of it, it's now gone. So I am thankful for my brother for saving me then. Back then, I wasn't thankful for him. I was like, fuck you, I was trying to end it all. But yeah, that was my first brush with, I suppose, the really dark side of addiction. Because I didn't do it on purpose, but I wasn't, afraid of the outcome. I knew it would happen. And I did it. But it wasn't planned, I can say that. But I did overdose, which was terrifying. I was under watch for quite a long time. I think that's when my family kind of realised that there may have been an issue. But then I moved, so that would have been when I was 18. that happened, and then I started working. I've worked since I was quite young. I started earning money at 15. We would have had a farm, a chicken farm and stuff like that when I was younger, so I always had money. And then I started actually physically working in a salon at 15. And then when I was 18, I started working in a hotel where I climbed the ladder, and I worked with quite a lot of people. But that's where I would have upped my intake of alcohol and where I would have been introduced to cocaine. And that kind of leads me on to kind of after school. The intake of alcohol kind of increased, progressively. You're going out more, you make friends, people party, there's house parties, there's this, there's always an excuse, I suppose, in Ireland to, take a drink or get a bag. Not anymore, because sober life is where I am, and I'm so proud of that. But back then it was like you lived for the weekend. I lived for the next bag. I lived for the next drink. I would have went to work hungover. I would have went to work so drunk. I met someone at 21, an ex, and I was like, I'm getting away from my life in this small little town and the people and the small-mindedness, and I'm running away. That relationship was extremely turbulent, and things happened. It was 4.5 years long, 4.5 years too long, and a lot happened to me in it. I don't tend to speak about it publicly. We were both wrong in situations in that, and my addiction fully went whirlwind in it. That other person's addiction seems to still be ongoing, unfortunately. But I wish them the best. But in regards to that, I moved out at 21 to a different county. And then within that relationship, I would have then moved to where I live now. With my current partner, Dan, who is the best person ever, and I love him. Shout out to Dan. But what would have happened in that time frame of kind of 21 to now 29 is I obviously moved away, and I didn't have my mom or my family or anyone around me telling me I couldn't drink, I couldn't, try this drug, try that drug. Where I was living, it was a party scene. Before I moved to Dublin. Obviously, Dublin is a huge party scene. When I lived with my ex in Dundalk, it was, it was great. There was fun times. There's also some terrible times, but that's where I kind of got to experiment. I never went to college. As I said, I worked since I was 15. So once I left school, I went straight into like full-time work, because I had rent to pay with my mom and to help out at home, and I had a life I wanted to pay for. There was drugs I needed to pay for, and there was alcohol I needed to pay for. So that all cost money. So I worked. When I moved to Dundalk, I also had a job. My partner at the time was able to support me and stuff like that. And we liked to party. We liked to party a lot. My issue would have been more alcohol. I won't go into the other person's life or what their issue is or anything like that. But yeah, there was a lot of drug taking. There was a lot of partying. I do not remember the majority of it because I was not sober a lot. I do remember that I know I turned up to work for one of the places I worked with up there, and I was under the influence of a drug called ketamine, and I entered a K-hole in work. And that's kind of one of the lowest lows I've had. There's been other lows, but because that was in person and like I was actually dealing with the public, it's one of the things I do highly regret. I regret all of my addiction and the things that have happened in it, but that's one thing that always sticks out, that I actually turned up and I could have hurt someone in that regard, even though I was only working in a restaurant. You never know what could have happened. There's hot food, there's hot drinks. Then we moved to Dublin, being obviously a member of the queer community. It's a very big party scene. Unfortunately, I know a lot of friends that are in addiction in the queer scene. Drugs are aplenty, and everyone has them, and everyone wants to share them. And then the Panny D happened. We were all stuck inside for nearly 4 years. And my addiction was like, oh, right, so we've lost a job, we're sad, we've trauma from our past. That whole PTSD from the childhood, and everything else that's happened. I will preface, I have been sexually assaulted quite a few times in my life, unfortunately. So some of these stories may pertain to that. So trigger warning. When we moved to Dublin, and then obviously the pandemic happened, I did live in city centre for a while, actually, when I was in Dublin, and I would have worked quite a few different jobs in Dublin. Every one of them entailed alcohol. Not the actual physical jobs, but after work, going out partying with friends from said jobs and stuff like that. It was just the people I was hanging around, the companies I was working for, it was very much a heavy culture of drugs and alcohol. And I can't blame that on anyone. That's just unfortunately how it is in Ireland. It's changing, but back then it wasn't. Then the pandemic happened. I lost my job. I was lucky enough that I qualified for the higher level of the pub payment at the time. But that enabled me to drink and take drugs to a level that no one could stop me because I was stuck inside my house. I could get alcohol delivered, and drug dealers didn't really care about the 5 kilometer thing. Which was terrifying because there was just guards out there, and I'm like, lads, I think back on it, and I'm like, the amount of just even my own old drug dealer, and I'm like, you risked getting arrested for selling drugs during, obviously this is the other side of it. A lot of addicts would have died or did die in the pandemic just due to withdrawals and stuff like that. And I will go into that a bit further, obviously, when I get to the part where I got sober. Withdrawals is very scary and very dangerous, and you should always do it with a medical person near, not like how I did it. But the pandemic just gave me time to dwell on everything that ever happened in my life and my past, and to drink on it, and be resentful towards my family, my friends, everything that was happening around me, my ex, just generally everything that had ever gone wrong in my life. I was like, cool, I'm gonna use this now to drink as much as I can, and deal with these issues. It didn't work, can confirm. Just made it worse. Then that relationship broke down, which was good for both of us. It was an extremely toxic, volatile, for lack of a better word, abusive relationship. And we just weren't. We weren't working. I got my shit together for a bit after we split. I did end up living with that person for quite some time after we split, and then they left. While they were living here, the addiction was still plentiful because we both still liked to party. And then when they left, I kind of got my life a bit more together. I got the job that I'm currently employed in, which have been quite supportive in regards to me getting sober and stuff like that. But shit hit the fan. I was practically living alone. I had always lived with someone since I moved out. So I moved out 7 or 8 years ago at this stage now. 8 years this year, I think, on the 17th of March. Who I moved out on Paddy's Day. Who does that? Me, apparently. It was very easy to get a train. No one was on it. But yeah, I moved up and all that. And when I was here, when me and my ex split, sorry, ADHD is real fun. Brain went crazy there. When he left, I was kind of left to my own devices, and I'd never been left to my own devices by myself with my own brain. I always had someone else to bounce off, and that's where my addiction was like, aha, we have him now. I remember this from being in rehab. One of my counselors said, your addiction is sitting in the corner doing press-ups, waiting to pounce. For you in your lowest moments. So it really took hold of me because I was alone. For some reason I was heartbroken. I don't know why I was heartbroken, because it was a happy relief, but I suppose you've lost something that you've known for so long. But yeah, life kind of just got really, really fucking bad. Nothing too bad happened. I just, my addiction was like, hey, you got money now. And I was earning a lot from what I had been previously earning. So when it was a nice paycheck, I could afford more drugs, I could afford really nice alcohol, and I could afford still to pay my rent and live. And that's what happened. I stopped going out and I started drinking in my house. Obviously during COVID I'd done that, and obviously during them years you couldn't go out, but I didn't continue to go back out because I was like, oh, but why would I go out when I can spend this amount of money and get it delivered to my house, or just go buy it in the shops and drink by myself in my room and cry and ring my family and tell them how terrible they are. Because that's where my addiction brought me. My addiction brought me to my knees, sitting in my room. I did meet my current partner, Dan, as I previously mentioned, in addiction. Dan actually saved me from killing myself one night. I don't know if many people know that. I was really, really low at one point. Our dating story is hilarious, and I hopefully want to, at one point we'll have Dan on just to talk about it, on how we met and that kind of stuff. It's just it was long winded. I worked to get my man. But yeah, there's sometimes that Dan was there for me during it, and he could see how bad it was. I would finish work and I would have the alcohol either there ready and waiting, or I would go get it straight away. And I'd be like, oh, like I'll talk to you, and then like within like an hour, I was like belligerently drunk because of the amount of alcohol I drink. The units or amounts I would drink was disgusting. I could like it's not even the war stories, but like the amounts of alcohol that I was drinking would kill a normal person, and the same with the amount of drugs I was taking. To put it this way, the only drugs I didn't take were crack cocaine and heroin. I tried everything else. If it could get me high, I was trying it. To stop voices in my head, to stop that negative voice, to stop that inner monologue, to stop the memories is what I was trying to do. When you're in addiction, you're looking for a solution to stop how you feel. That works at the start. I can very much confirm at the end it doesn't. At the end, I was sitting in my room crying every time I drank, wondering why I did it, regretting my decisions because I was ruining relationships with my family. I was ruining relationships with my partner. I was aggressive. People didn't want to be around me. People didn't want to know me. And I just was so sad. And I'll insert a clip here of, it's about 4 minutes, of what that sounded like. And even in the recording, I do state, I don't think I'll ever use this, but at least I have it. And what I want to say to, 4 years ago me, we did it. We did use it. And we're helping people with it now. Trigger warning, this is really depressing and sad, but it's the honest truth from an addict in addiction who was well aware that they were an addict, but was terrified to think what sober life could be. I'm trying to film a really real thing about me and my drink. And I can't, because I've been so fake for so long. I've hidden so much. It's so hard for me to be real on camera, and it's really, really hard. If I say I'm someone that has a fucking addiction to alcohol, I do. I know I do. Do I want to get help with that? Kinda. But there's a one part of my life that's normal that's left. And I don't do it anymore. Everything else is normal now. But being sober isn't. Being sober isn't fun. I'm not gonna lie. Being sober is not fun. I can't agree to being completely sober. Because I'm afraid of losing who I am when I'm drunk. But I much prefer sober Stephen. Do I need to be completely sober? No. With my family, probably. The journey I'm on, I don't know if I need to be completely sober, if I just need to be sober enough to function as a human, which also isn't a fucking idea, that I'd be sober enough to function as a human. Adult, I should be able to fuck your fucking alcohol. Why can't I see it? Oh, it's not okay. Can't blame my family or what's going on, what's happening, or what's going on now. Been in that life for so fucking long. Drinking was okay. I can't get drunk. Just so much for me to get drunk anymore. I don't know. I'm not feel bad anymore. I don't know if I want this to be used ever, but I've recorded it and been honest. I don't know. I myself a bit too real for me. Can confirm I will not be paying for anyone's therapy after that. Anytime I listen to or watch a video, because there is actually a video of that, I have kind of made a video format of this on YouTube. I will attach the link somewhere. Just going in depth about and stuff, and you can see me. In that video, I'm dead behind the eyes. I don't want to live anymore. And that's where addiction brought me. Addiction brought me to my knees of me not wanting to be alive anymore and just regretting everything. Me and my partner happened to have a fight at Christmas in 2022. And my partner stuck by me after that and helped me get the help. I went on a huge bender after we had that fight. I was, not going to live. My parents came up and my mother had to see me in bed, out of my face, drunk could be, so much that I was comatose. I was gaunt, I was skinny, I wasn't eating. I was a shell of myself, and the funny thing that me and my brother do say about that night is I may have been in the depths of addiction. I knew they were coming up to, intervene or whatever they were doing at the time. I think they were just trying to make sure I was still alive after everything that happened. And I had left my front door unlocked so they could get in, and I'd put myself in the recovery position and had myself set up in the bed so I wouldn't choke on my stick in case I did. Just start, whatever the word is when you only get sick in your sleep. And my brother was like, because my mom freaked out, was like, "Oh my god, that's not my baby," and it breaks my heart to hear my mom say that. My mom got to get it all off her chest when I was in rehab, and I'm very glad she did, because I put that woman through hell. Because my parents divorced when I was younger, as I mentioned, and there was shit that went on in our childhood. It's done. It's in the past. But I couldn't deal with it while in active addiction. That was my weapon against them. They needed to be told how terrible they were, what they'd done, how they'd failed me. And I regret that. But it gave me the grounds to have a better relationship with them now, because I was able to sit there, shut up, put up, and hear them out on how I had affected them. Because for so long they'd listened to me being like, "You're this, you're that, you're the other," and I'd never shut up and listened. So when my mom said that's not my baby, and when she said that to me in rehab, and she said to me after I got sober and stuff like that, still to this day brings a tear to my eye. Because she came to see me, and like I was a shell of myself. I didn't look like me. Wouldn't sound like me because I was fucking unconscious. But my brother did make a joke. Oh look, he was smart enough to have the front door unlocked for us and to put himself in the recovery position. Because me and my brother very much were like, "I have trauma. Let's make something funny because I can't deal with this." which it was, and I still love him for that. My mum was like, not the time, not the time. He looks dead, because she actually thought I was dead, because she was like, he's not breathing, and my brother was like, look, his chest is going up and down. My brother and my mum slept in the room with me that night. Not that they got any sleep. They sat watching me to make sure I didn't die in my sleep, or choke or anything like that when sick, if in case it happened. Because I was at the end. My dad happened to come up the next day after that, because they were doing shifts to see if I was okay. And then on New Year's Eve, I suppose I had that moment. I had that aha moment that I couldn't do this anymore. And I was on the phone to my mum, and I was like, I think that this is my last drink ever. I need to get help. And I'd said so many times, like along the journey of like the kind of last year of my addiction, I'd went to see counsellors and stuff like that. And, they helped a little bit. They were like, oh, you're not an addict, you're not, because as addicts, we're really good at hiding stuff. Like, I wasn't giving them the full truth of what was happening, and how much I was drinking, and how often it was, and the drugs I was taking and stuff like that. So I remember that phone call with my mom, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm like both physically and mentally tired. I'm done. It's either I kill myself or I get my shit together and get help. And it was the first time I'd ever been honest with myself, because I did. I reached out for help. I went to my doctors. They were shocked when I went in about it, because they'd known, obviously, as a medical professional, they know what's going on, but they can't say anything to you unless you bring it forward and stuff like that. Like my doctor would always talk to me about my drinking and like my drug taking and stuff like that, and how unhealthy I got. And when I was in addiction, I'd ballooned up to 16 or 17 stone, just due to, because having the eating disorder when I was younger, that I was like, starving myself. It then turned that I would overeat. And I used to have a drawer beside my bed that was like, cracked to the brim. And I just ate my feelings. So it was, drinking my feelings, eating my feelings, and then the drugs my feelings. And then obviously the sex has just been an ongoing thing all through my kind of adult years. Because when you're sexually assaulted, I suppose you kind of lose the value of yourself. And you think that you're not worth it. So you put yourself in situations that aren't safe. And unfortunately, I was taken advantage of on a couple of occasions. And, that's something that I carry with me. I have a Medusa tattoo on my leg, because I've took the power back on that. I no longer will ever allow that to happen to me in my life. And I will add in the podcast description links to, obviously, suicide prevention and drug help and sexual assault and stuff like that. Any help to any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I kind of realized I was done, and from there forward, from the 1st of January 2022, 2023, I can't count. I didn't take a drug or a drink. Which is stupid, because that's not how you detox. I did it myself. So I went through withdrawals for 5 days, which meant I could not get out of my bed. I couldn't eat. I could barely sleep. I was going through the sweats. Drug addiction itself is bad, but going through withdrawals, oh my God, you think you would understand each time. Because I did try to get sober over the years. Look, this was a 13-year battle with a very heavy demon that's always, there waiting and happy to fucking come back into your life. I would get sparse amounts, like a month here, 2 months here, a couple of weeks, couple of days, and I'd celebrate by drinking, because, logic. But yeah, when that happened, I just put the drink down, I put the drugs down, and I was just like I hadn't taken cocaine or any other drug in like a month before that. So I could kind of see the wheels were turning in my head, but I hadn't had the realization yet. But I sought help. I went to a medical professions. I got referred to be psychiatrically reviewed, because they thought I might have been suffering with other things. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm mentally ill. We all know that. I do suffer with ADHD. I say suffer. I live with ADHD. And I got referred. I was lucky with the job I have, that the insurance that they offer, my insurance covered a 5-week stay. in the rehab that I stayed in, and that it was intense. It's 5 weeks I'd never do again, but was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. And I'm uber proud of myself. Like, I had balls to say I had an issue and go get help. What that entailed, if I want to go into in too much detail, if you want to like reach out and ask me about it, I can tell you where it was and what they do and how to get in contact with them. But I'm not out here promoting people for free. Also, I don't think it's a bit frowned upon in this in the recovery area to be like promoting rehabs and stuff like that. Like, you know, people go where they go. But it was 5 weeks of intense live-in therapy. So I lived in the rehab. I had no phone. I had no contact with the outside world. We got a phone call once a week to our family. In the first week, you didn't get any. You had therapy 2 times a day. And then you had like kind of things that you would do. You'd go to meetings and stuff like that. You'd have your set lunch. You had a wake up time. They would give you your medication. Before I went into rehab, I was also prescribed antidepressants, just to obviously, because coming off such high levels of alcohol and drugs, my brain was in the sewer. So just to like, you know, mellow me out in there. So we went in there, and like it's a lot of talk therapy. You talk about your addiction, your childhood. They kind of go through it all, and I cried in rehab. I cried a lot. It was the first time I'd cried in years, and I felt feelings that I didn't know existed or were still there. And I got to heal parts of me that were very broken, and I got to let go of a lot of pain. And I have to thank myself for letting myself go to rehab, because like I can thank the rehab for the help, and they gave me the tools. They didn't do it for me. I went in and did it, and that's one thing I think I've learned in sobriety, that it's okay to be proud of yourself. And you know, like I did that for me, because a lot of the time as an addict, when you get sober, you're just like, oh no, all these people helped me. They did, and I am so thankful for the support system around me and the people who've helped me, and the rehab and the meetings I go to now, and my sponsor. You put the work in. If you don't put it in, it's not going to work. Like genuinely can't really remember what else we did in rehab, because it's over a year ago now, and it's all a blur. But I was supported by you know, the other addicts in there, and some of them I'm still very good friends with. Not all of them stayed sober, unfortunately. That's the thing with addiction. You can want to get sober, but you have to really want it, because it's very easy just to fall off the wagon. And it's been a journey. There was days in there where I wanted to go home, and then when it came to leaving, I didn't want to leave. Now I did mention obviously that my mom and the rest of my family and my partner got to come to rehab and like speak their grievances. And that's a day that's set up where us as addicts sit in a room with our peers that are in there with us, and your family member comes in and they are given 45 minutes to tell you what you have done to them. And you cannot respond. And as a cancer, and as an addict, and as someone with ADHD, that was very hard. But I sat there and I listened for the first time. And I heard how much hurt I had put my mom through, how much hurt I'd put my dad through, and how much hurt I'd put Dan through. And, you know, a lot of addicts will say, you'll walk over your own child for your addiction. And it's true. I walked over my family. I didn't have a child. I have a dog now, and he's my baby. He's my bestest baby. Georgie is the best. But I used people around me. Now, not in a monetary sense. I was lucky enough that I was able to afford my addiction. But I used people emotionally. Oh, I abused and used them. And that's what I learned. And I had to sit there and listen. And like, you know, I really got into writing when I was in there. I would write my mom letters and my boyfriend letters, and I got in touch with my feelings again, because I'd got rid of them a long time ago because they hurt. But once I got back in touch with them, they were hard. They were hard to deal with. I recently, so I'm obviously a year sober now, a year and a bit. I recently just came off the antidepressants as well. So like, she's full forced emotions now. Like, nothing is holding them back. All of the emotions are available, which is cool, because I haven't felt a full range of emotions in going on 14 years. So it's nice to be able to feel again. It gets scary, but that's what I have my sponsor for. an amazing man that brought me through the 12 steps, and now I get to bring people through the 12 steps. But yeah, recovery is hard. There's ups, there's downs. Life still happens. When I went into rehab, you're moved from society to heal and to learn and to understand, and then be thrown back out like a sacrificial lamb, and just been like, oh my god, everything's bright. There's phones, there's people. I don't have a schedule. So like you have to like relearn life and understand what it's about and what you want to do with your life moving forward. I was working at the time when I went into rehab, so I took out 6 months, which my work were quite good to do, and they supported me financially. Now there's some issues now with that. That's for me to deal with the HR. But yeah, I'm very thankful that I went to rehab. I'm very thankful for my family and friends that have been around me to support me, and I'm glad that I'm an addict because I was able to get sober, and now I just want to help others. I've always wanted to help people and do stuff like that, and I never could find a thing to do it for. And maybe it was because I wasn't sober yet, and I didn't realize that you could help people that way. But yeah, that's my sobriety journey. I now live a very fulfilled life. I have an amazing partner, Dan, an amazing family. We've an amazing son, Georgie. He is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. We do not have a child. That is terrifying. But he is our child. I game. I have friends. I have my life back. And I have to thank that to being sober. Life is still hard, There's still things that happen. Debt happens. Just life in general. The universe can be a bitch sometimes. But you're given the tools once you go through the 12 steps or whatever recovery process you've gone through. Recovery gives you the tools that, you missed out on in life, or you lost along the journey, that it is the battle of recovery or addiction. I do apologize. That you learn them and you understand, that you can be a good person, and you know what, you are worth it. Because I think a lot of people have an idea of an addict, someone who's this disgusting person that will do whatever they want for drugs. That is true, but that's not the person that's the addiction. The person is still in there, lost underneath all of that. So if you take anything away from this, if you do know anyone struggling, they can say some mean things, they can do some shitty things, but at the end of the day, there's still a human being underneath it all that's struggling and maybe needs some help. But they have to be willing to help. And I know Dumbledore said something along the lines of, even in the darkness, if you look, there's light. It's probably a wrong quote, but it's something along the lines of that. But yeah, thanks for listening. My name's Wolfie, otherwise known as Stephen, and thanks for checking in. More episodes to come, and I promise they're going to be more fun and uplifting. This is one that I wanted to kind of set the tone on the kind of stuff I'm going to be putting out. I've quite a few planned, and we'll be recording them soon. So yeah, check back in to the Wolfie Tots.